G'day, welcome back to Cam's Corner. Today I want to talk about one of the biggest traps in investigations, and honestly, one of the biggest fairy tales in safety. The gap between work as imagined and work as done. Or, in plain English, the difference between the job in the folder and the job in the dirt. Work as imagined is the neat version. It's the procedure, it's the flowchart, it's the safe work method statement with the nice headings, the revision number, the box that says, approved by, and everyone pretending that means the job now behaves itself. On paper, the task is tidy. The right people are there, the tools are available, the environment is stable, the timing is realistic, communication is clear, supervision is present, risks are identified, controls are applied. Beautiful. Could frame it and hang it in reception. But then there's work as done. That's the real thing. That's night shift in a warehouse. That's a road crew near sunset. That's a maintenance job when the workshop's full, the gear's missing, the supervisor's got 3 other dramas, and somebody still wants the task finished before knockoff. Real work is variable. People adapt, conditions change, stuff turns up late, other stuff turns up broken, and the job keeps moving, whether the paperwork is having a good day or not. The Safety-Wise material talks about formal and informal work practices, and that's exactly the point. The documented method is one thing. Actual practice can be something else entirely. Sometimes close, sometimes wildly different. And if you're investigating and you only read the procedure, mate, you're not investigating the job. You're investigating the fantasy version of it. Here's a blunt example from one of the case studies. Workshops full of vehicles needing maintenance. Pressure's on to get them repaired before the weekend, so production keeps rolling. Workers have gotten used to doing repairs outside the workshop. A mechanic is welding a vehicle's fuel tank. The vehicle's raised with a forklift and propped up with a piece of steel because the jacks are tied up in the workshop. The rented welding gear's been parked outside the vehicle footprint, so if it all goes pear-shaped, at least that won't get damaged. Supervisor's waiting to knock off and go for a beer. Now tell me that's the same job as the one in the procedure. On paper, that job would have looked controlled. Correct lifting method, correct support equipment, proper location, proper supervision, risk assessment, all that jazz. In the field, ugly, improvised, pressured, normalized. The paper version said, safe maintenance task. The real version said, make it work with what you've got. And that, right there, is why investigators miss things. They compare the event to the ideal and stop there. But the real question isn't what should have happened. The real question is, what system produced the version that actually happened? That's where the learning lives. Not in the binder, in the mess. So why does work drift from the script? Pretty simple. Because the script often gets written in a quiet room and the job gets done in a noisy one. People adapt for reasons. Time pressure, missing tools, poor design, conflicting priorities. In the source material, you see this all over the place. The online lead course talks about predictors of violating behavior, expectation that rules will have to be bent to get the work done, powerfulness or confidence, opportunities for shortcuts, and inadequate planning leading to work on the fly. That's not theory for theory's sake. That's Tuesday. Look at the grader near-miss case. Workers on foot, grader reversing, no positive communication, no designated spotter, no pre-task risk assessment, unclear scope of work, ineffective supervision. That didn't happen because everybody woke up and thought, beauty, let's ignore safe working practices today. It happened because the job as organized and supervised did not match the job as it needed to be performed safely. Same with the cable misidentification job at the solar farm. Cables weren't terminated to the planned cubicles. Why? You start peeling it back, and you get verbal scope, no proper review, changes on the fly, time pressure and cost control, no formal process for testing within scope, no dedicated QA on site. That's system mismatch, not just someone having a brain fade. Workarounds are often a symptom. They're the organization's unofficial operating system. They show you where task conditions, procedures, equipment, and organizational arrangements don't line up with reality. Sometimes the workaround helps people succeed. Sometimes it quietly loads the gun for later. This is where ICAM is useful, because it gives you places to put the story. Task and environmental conditions, individual or team actions, absent or failed defences, organisational factors. If workers are adapting because the workshop is full, that tells you something about task conditions and maybe maintenance management or incompatible goals. If they skip a risk assessment because changes happen constantly and nobody revisits the plan, that points to procedures, management of change, supervision, risk management. If a defence exists only on paper, well mate, it's not much of a defence. I use this analogy a lot. If everyone keeps taking a shortcut across the grass, don't just yell at their boots, ask why the footpath is in the wrong bloody place. Same at work. If people keep finding side doors, it usually means the front door is jammed, too far away, or guarded by paperwork that has never seen a real shift. Now, not every adaptation is noble, and not every workaround is safe. Some are routine violations, some are personal optimizing. Some are organisational optimizing, where commercial or production goals override safety goals. But if you want to understand drift properly, don't start with moral judgment. Start with mismatch. Ask what pressures, what conditions, what design issues, what failed controls made the unofficial way more usable than the official one. The first mistake investigators make? Treating procedure non-compliance like they've just solved the case. Aha! He didn't follow the procedure. Righto, Sherlock. And what made that procedure unrealistic, unavailable, unclear, outdated, or impossible to use in the conditions that existed? The SafetyWise guides are very clear on this. Procedures should be available, suitable, current, validated, user-friendly, and actually used. They should cover the scope of work, emergency provisions, even workaround provisions where relevant. If the documented method doesn't line up with the real task, then did not follow procedure is not the ending. It's the start of the investigation. Same with human error. The material says it plainly. Where human error is identified, the investigator must look beyond the error to find out why. That's one of the best lines in the whole lot, because it kills off lazy investigations. Human error isn't a cause you park in the report to keep management comfy. It's a label for something that still needs explaining. Take that level crossing case. If you stopped at road train driver saw crossing signals active but did not stop, you'd think job done. But the broader analysis showed the sun angle made signals difficult to see. Trees masked the train line. The train was being driven from the front footwell using remote control. The remote didn't provide adequate speed data. The induction loop was in a non-standard position, and there'd been poor response to previous incidents and near misses. See the difference? Non-compliance might be present, but it's swimming in context. Or the light vehicle rollover. You can say the driver exceeded the posted speed limit and did not drive to conditions. True. But also true, pooled water, mud and slurry, heavy rain over previous days, informal journey management, no formal risk assessment for the task, low competency for that road, passive IVMS, absent rollover protection to required standard, inconsistent road alerts, no follow-up of previous rollover actions. If your finding is just driver error, you haven't found the lesson, you found the nearest person. Investigators have got to resist the urge to diagnose too early. Same in interviews. The guidance says we are gathering information, not diagnosing. Neutral. No premature conclusions. No power games. No taking sides. That matters because once you decide the worker is the problem, every question you ask after that becomes a search for confirmation. And here's the sting in the tail. Shallow blame feels efficient. It lets everyone move on, but it leaves the system exactly as it was. So the next person turns up to the same task, with the same pressures, same missing gear, same clunky procedure, same tolerated shortcuts, and guess what? Different name, same incident. So if you're investigating and you write, failed to follow procedure, force yourself to add the next line, why was the written method not followed? And what does that reveal about the system? If you can't answer that, you're not done. You've just hit the first fence post. So how do you see work as done? Not by sitting at your desk, stroking the procedure and hoping it tells you the truth. You get out there, you observe, you interview, you review documents, you build the timeline, you compare what was meant to happen with what actually unfolded. That's straight out of the SafetyWise material. Data gathering starts with PEOP. People, environment, equipment, procedures, organization. First, you brainstorm data sources in Mark 1. Then you go gather the facts and build Mark 2, separating contributing from non-contributing factors. That process is gold because it stops you locking on to one explanation too early. It forces you to look across the whole system of work. Work as done shows up in the details. Interviews tell you how the shift really started, what the worker was assigned, what instructions were actually given, what tools were available, what pressures were around, what communication happened, whether anybody changed the plan without calling it change. The witness questions in the workbook are pretty solid on this. Start from beginning of shift, describe the assigned work, who gave the instruction, what procedures or JSEA were used, what were the working conditions, were there pressures from other jobs or time. That's how you get the real sequence. Observation matters too. Scene inspection tells you positions, sightlines, barriers, surfaces, lighting, controls, housekeeping, weather effects. Photos help, sketches help. Reconstruction can help if it's safe. Because sometimes the paper says visibility was fine, and then you stand where the operator stood and realize the blind spot's big enough to hide a ute and a bad decision. And timelines, don't skip them. The guides say timelines help organize data, resolve conflicting information, and identify missing pieces. Too right. The real sequence of decisions matters more than the ideal sequence. In the aircraft nitrogen case, the task changed during the day. The cylinder hadn't been planned for removal. Guidance was vague. The chief engineer was busy. Extra workers were involved. The sequence exposed how a new, unplanned task got layered into existing work without proper risk assessment or clear method. That's work as done. Not the maintenance plan, the actual chain of events. One of the most useful tricks is to put documented work and actual practice side by side. Procedure says one thing, interviews describe another. Training records say competent. Worker says first time on this task. Plan says spotter required. Graders reversing without one. Scope says labelled and tested. Work was verbally briefed and changed on the fly. That side-by-side difference is not an inconvenience, it is evidence. And I'll say this too, work as done is often smarter than the document in some ways. People patch holes, they recover, they adapt. Sometimes they keep the place running in spite of the system, not because of it. Your job as investigator is not to sneer at adaptation, it's to understand when it was necessary, when it became normal, and when it crossed over from resilient to risky. Once you've got the gap between work as imagined and work as done, don't just point at it like it's self-explanatory. Read it properly. A gap can mean lots of things. Could be a design flaw. The equipment, layout, or interface makes the job harder than it needs to be. Could be a training gap. Not enough knowledge, skill, or competency for the actual task. Could be supervision issues. No oversight, poor instruction, passive tolerance of violations. Could be incompatible goals, where production, cost, time, and safety are all elbowing each other in the ribs, and nobody's been clear which one wins. The SafetyWise material treats incompatible goals as a real organizational factor, and fair enough. It turns up everywhere once you stop pretending it doesn't. Now, not every gap is bad. Some adaptations are necessary. Work is variable, conditions shift. A skilled worker adjusting to a real condition the procedure didn't foresee is not automatically a villain. The trick is separating necessary adaptation from risky normalization. Necessary adaptation usually has a clear reason, a local condition, and often some awareness of risk. Risky normalization is different. That's when the workaround becomes the standard way. Everybody knows it, supervision tolerates it, and the organization either can't see it or quietly benefits from it. The online material calls out passive tolerance of violations. That one's a beauty because it names the thing lots of places pretend is just culture or flexibility. Sometimes it's just management seeing non-compliance and doing bugger all. So here are some practical investigator questions. Not fancy, just useful. What was the job actually like on the day, not usually like? What changed? If the procedure wasn't followed, was it available? Was it suitable for the actual task? Was it current? Did it cover the changed conditions? If not, why not? What tools or equipment were missing, unavailable, or awkward? What pressures existed? Time, staffing, competing jobs, production targets? What communication occurred, and what was assumed rather than said? Who knew this was normal practice? Who supervised it? Had similar incidents, hazards, or near misses happened before? What actions from those were left open, delayed, or forgotten? And one more. If this workaround disappeared tomorrow, could the job still be completed safely and effectively? If the answer is no, then the workaround isn't just a naughty habit. It's compensating for a broken bit of the system. Think about the level crossing story. There were previous near misses, accepted practice around remote driving from the footwell, and a management response that effectively armored the train rather than confront the operational problem. That's a cracking example of reading the gap badly at first, then properly later. The gap wasn't just between rule and behaviour, it was between what the system said it wanted and what it had come to accept. When you read gaps properly, the report gets sharper. Recommendations stop being retrain worker every second page. They start addressing design, procedures, communication, risk management, change management, contractor management, supervision, the stuff that actually shapes performance. So where does all this land? Pretty simple, really. Leaders and investigators need to design work around reality, not fantasy. That means better procedures, not longer ones, better ones. Current, usable, available, validated, written in language people can actually work with. Procedures that reflect task conditions, foreseeable changes, and what the job really demands. If the official method only works on a calm day with full staffing, perfect gear, zero interruptions, and saint-like humans, that's not a safe system. That's a brochure. It means better controls and defenses, not just admin wallpaper. Use the hierarchy of controls properly, engineering and design where you can, isolation, barriers, better interfaces, better warning and detection systems. Don't just keep stacking forms on top of broken design and calling it due diligence. It means better feedback from the field. The source material bangs on, rightly, about operational feedback, organizational learning, audits, reviews, previous incidents, corrective action follow-up. If workers are constantly adapting, that is feedback. If incidents repeat, that is feedback. If close calls are piling up and recommendations die in a spreadsheet, that is feedback too. Ugly feedback, but feedback. And for investigators, keep your discipline. Gather broadly with PIPO. Separate contributing from non-contributing facts. Build the timeline. Analyze with the check questions. Look beyond human error. Focus recommendations on absent or failed defenses and organizational factors. Use fair and just culture after the investigation where needed, not instead of one. A few punchy takeaways before I bugger off. 1. The procedure is not the job. 2. Workarounds are clues, not conclusions. 3. Non-compliance is the start of the story, not the end. 4. Compare documented work with actual practice side by side. 5. If the same adaptations keep appearing, your system is talking to you. Listen. And here's the hard truth. If the job only works when everyone behaves like a robot, remembers everything, sees everything, has perfect tools, perfect timing, perfect supervision, and never ever adapts, then the system's already stuffed. Design for humans. Investigate reality. Learn properly. We'll keep going next time, because there's no shortage of blind spots out there. Catch ya.